And thank you everyone for
Sorry.
being here. It is a holiday, Juneteenth, so I want to wish everyone a happy Juneteenth and thank you for taking time on this holiday to be with me. Also, just want to take a moment to recognize this day as the end of slavery recognized in the U.S., which is just such an important holiday for us to be celebrating today, especially with the political climate that we're in. So, thank you all for joining me. And my name is Amber Schmidt, and I'm the New England Zero Waste Organizer with Clean Water Action and Clean Water Fund, and part of our program with ReThink Disposable. A majority of the work that I do focuses in schools, but it's not exclusive to schools. I work on zero waste practices for events, emergency food providers, soup kitchens, restaurant establishments, really anywhere, because this is a circular economy where we're trying to get to, and that involves all aspects. I do really stick to the schools as being a great area of focus because they are municipal buildings, right? These public schools, and therefore we and our governments have the ability to change how they look and what they're eating off of and using in schools when it comes to banning styrofoam. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I've got a little presentation. Oh,
Oop,
it says sharing
sorry.
is okay.
There we go.
Fantastic. Okay, so let me go ahead and share and then hope that I can up here get to the presentation. Apologies while let me actually stop sharing and get that up on my screen first. Fantastic. So folks should be able to see this. I'll put it in present mode. Does this look good for folks? Head nodding, yes. Awesome. So we're talking today about eliminating styrofoam trays in schools. I understand that Delaware did pass legislation that would eliminate this for the schools. But I like to kind of think about what the most impactful reason is for schools to eliminate those expanded polystyrene trays or styrofoam trays. Generally, our biggest concern is, of course, health. I think more so than I tend to talk to administrators about, environment or cost. The health of the students in the school should be the top priority, and having a material that children 180 days of the year, more than half of the year, are eating off of leaching into their food is extremely disturbing. Even as someone who does not have children, I would not want to have my child, were I to have one, eating off of toxic styrene. And 12 states have actually banned the use of styrofoam, including here where I'm located in Rhode Island, because of that toxicity in part, as well as the environmental aspect of the breakdown of styrofoam into microplastics. The second biggest driver that I find for schools to consider moving to reuse and away from styrofoam or single-use disposable trays is the cost. It's just a simple mathematics. It costs more to use single-use disposable items than it does to purchase a reusable item and continue to use it. We're also in a waste crisis, at least here in New England, we are. We're seeing old, very dirty, polluting incinerators being shut down. Landfills are reaching capacity. States like Connecticut are spending $93 million every year of taxpayer money to ship waste out to Ohio, Pennsylvania, and sometimes even further than that. So that is a huge driving factor for schools, especially as federal funding is very wary right now of what may or may not be available in the future for food nutrition programs and free meals. And then, of course, the one reason that we all know not to use plastic is the environment, especially polystyrene, expanded polystyrene or polystyrene foam, because it is lightweight. So it easily floats out of garbage trucks as they drive down the road. It's easily carried by wind, and it's very flimsy material. As anyone knows, you can easily rip apart styrofoam, and when that happens, what do we see? Those little tiny styrofoam beads, right? Which then disperse into our environment. So both polluting, land and water. So really harmful overall. So why is expanded polystyrene a problem? I think we all on this call know, but it's important to understand these bullet points when we're talking to school administrators as to why this is such a harmful material. It is toxic. The FDA does consider it a probable human carcinogen, and it can lead to some pretty long-term health effects, including neurological issues. And it's also not recycled. It's a material that is just very difficult and expensive to recycle, and therefore it is not. Many states, even that used to take styrofoam at their transfer stations or at their landfills, are also now stopping those programs. So the issue there is that we really just need to eliminate it. It cannot go anywhere except in a landfill, in an incinerator, or unfortunately in our environment. And as we mentioned, it has a high probability of deteriorating into microplastics and then leaching that styrene chemical within it into groundwater. So I wanted to touch on why not just switch to compostable trays then, right? Because that is a single-use disposable alternative that can be better for the environment. Unfortunately, compostable trays can contain a toxic chemical called PFAS. If you're not familiar, it is a long chain carbon, fluorinated carbon. It's a very strong bond. It is persistent in the environment and extremely harmful and carcinogenic. Um, and it is used as a water grease prevention. So it's often put onto compostable items to prevent grease and water from soaking into that compostable item and making it flimsy. You can find, PFAS-free compostable trays. They must be BPI certified or similarly certified product. Which of course is going to mean it's going to cost more. It's going to cost more than a styrofoam tray. The difference can be pretty small. Styrofoam trays for schools that I work at, the lowest that I've seen is usually around 7 cents for a tray, buying in bulk. Buying, depending on the quantity that the school purchases, I've seen them be able to get BPI compostable trays at about 9 cents. So fairly comparable, but again, it's going to cost more than the styrofoam alternative, and it's going to cost more than the reusable alternative as well. And even if you do get a BPI certified compostable, it has to be commercially composted, right? These cannot be backyard composted. And that also means that the school must participate in a commercial compost hauler and have a contract with them to actually make sure that those compostable trays don't just end up in the landfill like their plastic counterparts would. And then what I feel is a really important part of this, which is the education to students and encouraging that throwaway lifestyle and that throwaway behavior, which is really where we want to get away from when we look at moving to reuse and circular economies, right? We want to know that we're not using something for 5 minutes and then it is getting landfilled or disposed of, and that's going to sit there for hundreds and thousands of years, possibly. And this still encourages that, just to take all your stuff and throw it away. It can also hinder other impacts in the cafeteria if you are looking at doing sorting, making sure that students understand where certain items go and the value that they have. If you're doing compost sorting in your schools, or if you're showing sorting stations where they can dump liquids and recycle milk cartons and all of that. Having an item that just gets thrown away, even if it gets thrown into a compost and is actually composted, still teaches that that's okay, and that's how we should be treating the things that we use every day. So, what is the solution? It's switching to reuse and reducing trash. And I came up with a little bit of information here just to give you a sense of how much a school district produces. So, and I went with kind of a medium-sized one, at least for here in New England, about 2,500 students. Um, and they use about 500,000 single-use disposable items that go in the trash each year if they were to use a disposable tray and a disposable utensil, which can equate to over 3 tons of trash. So we talk often about the cost savings of switching. And so I have this little flyer here that kind of shows the cost. Again, this is based on about 9 cents for a tray, 7 to 9 cents for a disposable tray, and about 4 cents for a disposable utensil or disposable, cutlery set, which is generally what we've seen in my work with schools at those costings. So switching to reusable trays, you will save $16 after the payback period or your return on investment period, which you can see just after 100 days, right? Um, a, a, a HIMSA green screen certified stainless steel tray costs between $7 to $9 depending on the bulk. So I went on the higher end with 9. If we're looking at a 9 cent disposable item, very easy math there, just 100 days. So, little over half of the school year, you're going to see that return back. And then $16 every year thereafter. And then for utensils, $7. And you get the return on investment. You can buy reusable utensils for about 50 cents, 50, 60 cents per item. So you get that back after about 16 uses. So very, very high return on investment here. And also utensils are one of the larger line items that I see in schools. Um, Especially if they're doing utensil kits. And a huge amount of waste from that because they're, plastic fork, plastic spoon, with a napkin, possibly a plastic straw wrapped in plastic. So, even in schools where it's just, you take a fork or spoon at once, kids take multiples sometimes they need more than one. So it can be a very costly, even though small, what we would think, utensil, just a small item, can end up really costing the schools quite a bit of money in the long run. So just to go over the benefits that we see of reuse, savings, right? We see that from not purchasing disposables, and we see that from reduced waste hauling. That school district that I mentioned, 2,500 students, about 3 tons of trash a year. Their Department of Public Works anticipates them to see, they'll see about 12,000 in savings just from the switch to trays. But they will see, they have not transitioned utensils. They will see an additional $20,000 of savings from their municipal, reduction in waste hauling. That's pretty significant, especially for taxpayers in towns. Consistency. We saw this during the pandemic, right? And we see this even more so now with the threat of tariffs. I can tell you that virgin plastic, the largest exporter of virgin plastic is China. And I believe a lot of our paper and pulp products come from Canada. So both plastic trays, single-use disposable, and potentially compostable trays could be hit with some pretty significant price fluctuations depending on what happens with tariffs moving forward. We also know that the at least the green screen certified products that are available are safe to eat from. We do tell schools that they should purchase those green screen certified items. They are stainless steel trays. They've been tested to very rigorous and high standards to make sure that they don't leach heavy metals into food because we're dealing with stainless steel. There can be things like lead, cadmium, chromium, and mercury, depending on where that steel is manufactured and the quality of it. These products have all been tested to make sure that they're not going to leach anything toxic into the products that the children eat. Um, and then again, the education, right? Teaching students sustainable practices so that they bring that outside of the school and home with them and into other areas of their life where they can practice this. So a little bit about the logistics. So now, those are kind of like how do you get the administration on board with considering, how to do this? Once you can kind of lay out the cost savings for them and the ease of teaching the students and the sorting stations, where do we go from there, right? Because we have schools that may have dishwashers that are not being used. We may have schools that have dishwashers that are broken and therefore they've just never fixed them, and that's why they have never went with reuse prior. Or you may have a school that just never built a dishwasher into the school. They only have a three bay sink. Schools up here in New England, we have some that are fairly old, some almost 100 years or more. So that can pose significant issues. So the first thing that I like to do after doing kind of a cost savings waste reduction audit with the school is to do a school facility infrastructure assessment. This goes over every school building that they have and what they have as far as storage and dishwashing capacity. I look at where the plumbing lines are. And then, of course, we want to ensure that a future construction, as I mentioned with that bill, H529, that we're building dishwashers for reuse, and we want to make sure that we're building them for cafeteria reuse. I think that's a really specific difference. We do not want to just install a pots and pans dishwasher. Although that is useful for washing pots and pans, it uses more water. It takes longer to use, and therefore is not ideal for large volume washing of trays for the cafeteria. So you want to make sure that the schools are getting the right types of dishwashers when they are installing them, and that they are installing them when and where construction is happening. Once the school assessment happens, from there we look at schools that may have broken dishwashers. That's an easy fix. We know that they have got plumbing. We know that they've got electrical hooked up. We can just plug and play, right? We can just take that old one out, put the new one in, maybe with a little bit of tweaks, but that's usually generally the easiest and most cost effective. The next would be to find schools likely to renovate, specifically to install a dishwasher and move to reuse. So you're going to be looking at where the plumbing lines are, where the storage is, how the space is set up, but we like to identify. And I usually do that. This is, a multi-year, over in some districts can be over a decade long transition to get their schools up to where we need them to be with dishwashing capacity. So we want to start with the easiest schools first, and then we want to aim towards securing that funding down the road to make sure we can do all of the schools. We also want to make sure that the return locations are clearly marked with large signage and that there's education. It is so important to not just throw these new trays in the school and expect the students and staff to pick this up. There should be a lot of education behind it. So if you can get into the school and you can, we have little videos that we like to share. We have kitchen staff explaining why they're moving away. I can tell you that when we've done this in a school that a district I recently transitioned in Massachusetts, the high school students were cheering because we were getting styrofoam out of the cafeteria. Now, some of those high school students were seniors and they won't get to see the benefit of the new trays the next year, but students, they know about the plastic crisis that we're in. They know about climate change. They're aware. They're going to be inheriting this world, and they want us to do the right thing. So we just need to educate them and let them know that we are doing the right thing for them and that we want them to really make the program successful by returning their trays and not throwing away their utensils. And while we do all of that, we're going to prevent a massive amount of waste from going to landfills and incinerators. You also want to make sure that you've got the space for storage, and you could be I like to be pretty inventive here. Some schools are very, very tiny kitchens, so making sure things are on movable things, movable drying racks, movable storage, shelving units can all be very helpful, especially if they need to be moved out of a kitchen. I have schools that they need the dishes out of the kitchen so they can prepare the meals. And then once the meals go out, then they have room in the kitchen to bring the drying rack back in and then run the trays through the drying rack. And it's a very, very tight space. So want to plan for that and be creative in how you can figure that out, but also make sure that you follow health guidelines in that storage and all of that. So, and then lastly, labor. We all know that when we bring up the reuse, we hear it's going to be so much in labor, right? It's going to take so much in labor. We can't afford the labor. It's cheaper to just buy disposable items. But we've actually found that that's not necessarily the case. In places that have never had a dishwasher, where it's broken or where they're exclusively using a three sink system, we don't see any additional labor because instead of now hand washing all of those pots and pans that they used for cooking the food or preparing the food, they are now able to throw those through a 60 to 90-second dishwasher cycle and have them come out clean and sanitary on the other end. So imagine instead of hand washing in your sink a whole bunch of big pots and pans, you just throw them in your dishwasher. And imagine your dishwasher runs pretty quickly, 60 seconds, less than a minute or so, generally between 45 and 90-second cycles are the dishwashers. Um, we do see some increase in potential labor where you do have a pots and pans dishwasher that kitchen staff may be using to wash those pots and pans, and now they have to now additionally run trays through it. But we found that if you prepare the lunch waves correctly, that a lot of that can happen as meals are going out. And so it's not like you're leaving all of these dirty dishes, 800, dirty trays until the end of all 5 or 6 lunch waves in a middle school, right? You're running those through as the waves are coming through, you're throwing them on the drying rack. So there may be a little extra time at the end of the day where you might need to just take stuff that was drying and stack them or run a couple extra loads through. Um, but for the most part, we have not seen a significant amount, and certainly not any amount that's greater than the general savings that the school will see from reducing the cost of disposable items. And there's another option as well, as we talked about the infrastructure constraints for existing schools. There are third-party wash hubs that have become available. I would suggest looking into any that are, potentially could service schools near you. Um, it's also great for any labor constraints that you may face, and again, will reduce waste hauling. It can be more expensive to use a third-party wash hub, as in it may be 30 cents per item for them to pick up and then wash and then bring back those sanitized dishes. But if you work with your Department of Public Works on the waste hauling reduction and you work with your school department on what they would anticipate in-house washing to cost the school, you might be able to see that it's a pretty comparable cost and that using a third-party wash hub is a good alternative. As you work towards getting dishwashers or getting a centralized kitchen for your district, right? We see that as well, where a new high school is being renovated and they say, you know what, instead of getting all these little dishwashers in all 10 of these schools, we're going to build a massive wash facility and centralized kitchen at our high school. And then all of those meals and trays will go out from there and then come back and get collected. And just wanted to give you kind of the best practices for setting up sorting stations. Moving to reuse really works best when we're incorporating all other aspects of zero waste in the cafeteria. So that includes the first and foremost, which is the share table here. That is where good, unopened, uneaten food can be given back and that students can access, or it can be donated to a food pantry or food bank. That way, we're capturing good food that people can eat because food insecurity is rising. Then we have a utensil bin, right? We always hear, what about kids throwing away stainless steel utensils? We don't want to be buying 50-cent utensils and having them throw them in the trash. Well, the best thing to do is have them remove their utensils before moving through the sorting station. So they take their utensil and that goes right in a bin. Then they take any milk or liquids that they have and that goes in a liquids bucket. Then we have a recycling bin. So if your, state recycles cardboard milk, that would be where that goes. So pour the milk out, throw it in the bin. Here in Rhode Island, we can recycle cardboard milk cartons. For some reason in Massachusetts, they don't. So little strange working across different state lines. But you can always transfer this and do landfill first and then recycling if that feels easier. We do switch that up depending. Then we have, the landfill, the trash, then your compost. That's where the only thing left on the tray is the food, so they can then just take that tray and dump it upside down. They don't have to touch the food, they can just knock it into the compost bin and then put their tray down. And using this method, I've seen in one of the smaller schools serving about 150 students using this method, they have seen zero loss of their utensils into the trash in their cafeteria at all. So it's a really great system that works. And that brings me to the end. So there is my information there.